What's up, everybody? This is Kyle. This is Chris.
Hey, guys.
Welcome. I'm really excited. Chris, I met a couple years ago, dude.
A couple years ago at Crema, actually.
Was that
Yeah,
Crema?
you just literally came in. I was bartending, and you sat down at a restaurant. This is actually something I've never told you. Want to hear something funny?
Yeah.
You came in with a lady
Yeah.
who I thought was attractive. Yeah, and I wasn't getting the vibe that you were a couple, so I brought out a free drink for you guys to share, and it was hilarious because I was like, maybe I could chat this girl up, get her number, and then I clicked with you so much, I barely talked to her at all, and then got your number actually, and now here we are years later sitting at a podcast.
So funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've never told you that actually. I was thinking about it on the way down. I was like, oh wow, I guess he doesn't know that. But yeah, you're like with this attractive girl, and again, I don't know. I think she lived in Phoenix.
Yeah, that's a friend of mine.
Yeah, and I wasn't getting the vibe that y'all were a couple, so I just came out and chatted, and it was like literally barely talked to her and talked to you for like 20 minutes, and like da 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 da. Became friends. I was like, oh, that was actually great.
I'd never do that. It's so funny. Yeah, my friend from Phoenix. Yeah, Chris is, just a really genuine dude. He's, learned a lot, grew a lot. We were talking on this little right before we started this, catching up, and lives in Flag, and just, really has come from the bottom to the top, and how he dug himself up. And I think that's what I really want to talk about on this podcast, is just how, we have both kind of just dug ourselves up, from where we used to be, and the process of that, how we did it, how you do it, some things that have helped Chris, throughout that. And yeah, so this is welcome to an episode of The Trail Ahead, and we're just going to go right into it. I think
Nice.
That's, excited. So Chris, what is some things that have helped you get from where you used to be to where you are sitting right here today?
So I think first, I've talked about this on other podcasts. So let me give a quick breakdown of where I came from, so that give reference to where I am now.
Yeah.
I've been sober for almost 7 years now.
Proud of you. That's big.
Yeah, it's I have zero desire to go back, so I'm in a really good place. But basically, I spent a lot of so I had a bit of a challenging childhood. I didn't get along with my stepfather. He was like, not quite physically abusive, but pretty much abusive in every other aspect, and kind of didn't connect with many men as a child. I had 5 sisters, close with my mom and stuff, but I kind of always sought the love of my stepdad, who was never ever going to give it to me no matter what. And so it kind of created a lot of self-worth issues. Fast forward, as an adult, I became a severe alcoholic, and then copious amounts of drugs. And then it was pretty much, I always explain it that everybody has highs and lows, and the highs were getting lower and the lows were getting way lower. And so it was this trending map going downward. And so I just got severely depressed, put a gun in my head, and almost pulled the trigger. I remember putting the gun in my head and turning up the bottle of whiskey, trying to get enough courage to do it that night. And then I blacked out. That was pretty much the last thing I remembered. I blacked out and then woke up, and there was a spilled bottle of whiskey on the ground. And I remember rolling over onto the cold gun in the morning. I woke up, I was like, oh no. And then so that was the start of the journey. Basically, it became more we've touched on it briefly, but very shortly after that, there was it wasn't a quick immediate I'm done drinking forever. It was a little bit of a process, but I did quit drinking, and then I thought that was the problem that I was fixing, and it just the problem wasn't the drinking. I had all these other problems that I was trying to mask with drinking, and so I spent a few years thinking oh cool, I've done what I needed to do, and I've done this work on myself, and I've grown so much. But I still never told anybody about that suicide attempt for years. I think it was almost 3 years, at least 2.5 years before I told anybody. I went to go tell my mom, and I just could barely get the words out. I just had never spoken these words out loud. So I'm just pouring tears. I'm just like snot, like a little kid just crying. Finally get it off, and it was like this huge weight. And I was like, it was this like very cathartic, like this experience of me learning that this is when the work has started. Like I remember and I made a concerted effort to like talk to my friends, my close friends about it. I actually told her not to tell any of the family. I had told my dad, told some of my best friends. And then over a year I got traction and realized like the healing comes from talking about it and being vulnerable. We kind of touched on how vulnerability is both so important and very, very difficult, I think, for men specifically. It's difficult in general to be vulnerable. I can speak from a man's perspective because we're men, So yeah. And then kind of just that, since then it's been like 4 years, and it's just been a long process of like learning to feel the pain, like to sit in your own feelings is healing, and it's tough.
So tough.
I'm sure you have a lot of experience in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing for us men is to like sit in our shit and to really sit down, listen. And I said this before, but I think true happiness comes from someone asking, what's true happiness to you? And it's being able to sit in your thoughts and be happy. Because sitting in your thoughts is really, really scary.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, at least for me, which is why I grabbed the bottle, And I never really got into hard liquor, but I would drink beer, and which messes up your stomach just as much. Did you have friends that were supporting you? You said it was 3 years since you tell your parents that.
Yeah.
Mom, did you have friends that you had talked to about it that knew you were struggling, or how did you
No, nobody knew for those 3 years at all. Not a single person. And so the sobriety became kind of difficult because they didn't understand why. I was just a fun party guy, and they didn't see all that sitting at home drunk alone. Like, why am I doing this? Waking up the next morning, like full of anxiety, just like ridden with anxiety that you can't explain. And so they didn't see all that. And so then I was like, yeah, like I didn't really tell them anything. So when it happened, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not drinking. And they're like, what? Why? Like, they just didn't understand for years. And luckily I didn't get a ton of pushback. They just like, okay, that's weird, but whatever, and they, I have lost a lot of friends in sobriety, but it wasn't even really because they weren't supportive. It was more of like, we were just in different places in our life. Like a lot of the people I left behind, I don't know what to say left behind, but a lot of the people I kind of parted ways with, they're not bad people. They were just in deep in their own struggle, and I was spending enough of my time trying to help them that it was bringing me to a negative place, bringing me back to a dark time. So I had to like kind of remove myself from my own kind of well-being. So it wasn't like people think like, oh, you quit and then everybody ostracizes you. And it wasn't really like that. I did feel we talked about like you feel lonely though, because you wrap your identity in the drinking, or I was telling you I was a river guide at the time. They party like animals. So I literally had to like leave river guiding to get sober. So like the two things I did most, which was whitewater raft and drink, I gave up. And then I'm like, well, am I boring now? Like, am I no fun? Am I not like, do I not bring value to public situations anymore? And so you got to work through that a little bit. And that was a pretty long process to understand that.
What helped you in that process? Because I know you said that was your identity, like the river guy, being that, fun, laughy, drunk, party animal. How did you, kind of reset yourself and kind of reclaim yourself?
I think so. So when I quit drinking officially, it wasn't even. I wasn't like I'm done drinking forever. I was just like, cool. I'm gonna take a break from this. And it took 3 to 4 months, and at the end of that 3 or 4 months, I was genuinely, at the core, like don't get me wrong, still had low times. I still again, you had to sit with those feelings that become even harder to deal with. But I felt like this actual, real, genuine happiness that came from like a good place and not a substance. And so that was my motivator. It was like, cool, I'm gonna go as far down this rabbit hole as I can and find wring out as much happiness as I can out of the rest of this life that I have. And so that was like my motivator. So like it just, I don't know if there was any like specific thing that helped me get to where I needed to be in terms of being comfortable with who I was, but I was like, I know I'm happy, and that's the most important thing. So I guess it was just like me finally being in a good place that kind of just motivated me to like, I mean, I'm, again, like when I met you, I'm very extroverted. I can talk to a wall. I can have a conversation with anybody on the road, like, so I was like, cool, like that's who I am. I just have to like rewire that I don't need the alcohol to do this anymore.
So interesting, because quitting drinking now, I feel more confidence than I've ever had.
Way more. Way.
And in the beginning, you don't really realize that, and I feel like I had to have it to be social, but I think because I drink in not every social aspect, but like every scenario is usually, oh, let's go to happy hour, let's go out to Denny's, or let's go to the bar, let's go to karaoke. And then you don't have it anymore. It's kind of like your crutch, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I have to go talk to women, and I don't have like
that never gets easy though.
You don't have like a few drinks and to kind of ease the like the nerves or whatever it is you're doing. And I think that is so important to not like once you release that crutch.
Yep.
Is when you really start finding yourself.
Yeah, and it's like you said, I think that's I guess I've never thought about that, but yeah, I'm like way more confident now. And I guess it's like you go into a social situation already feeling confident. Yeah. So you don't need the substance to feel the confidence anymore. I guess I've really never broke it down that way, but yeah, that's like, yeah, you feel like I'm confident in who I am now. Mm-hmm. I know who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. I've done the work. And so I'm not starting from this like shattered shell of a human being who hasn't worked on his issues. It's like, no, I've spent 7 years delving in the deep and like setting in the feelings, like you said, and just like marinating in this like space that's like, oh, cool, nothing can hurt me now, like, yeah.
I think Chris said something really good earlier. He was saying like his best days are even, or how did you say it?
My worst days now are still better than my best days in the past, like when I was in my addiction mode.
And it's so true. I think when you're in it, and we're talking about gratitude too. When you're in it, it's like, what is there to be grateful for? Because you're in such a bad place. But now there's so much to be grateful for, right? Mm-hmm. And it's tough to be in that low place, but it's even tougher to stay in it.
Yeah.
And once you get out of it, you realize it's so tough to stay in that, but it's hard to think that there's better when you said, I think we had similar childhoods. It seems like with our fathers, just talking a little bit before we started this self-esteem was something that I've struggled with my whole life. Is kind of, and I think I wore a mask for so many years trying to see, this upbeat, happy, vibey, like same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I can talk to a wall and I can go anywhere. How we met that day. It's like, that's how I'm always am.
Yep.
But in the inside, you're like, whoa, who am I? Even though people think, oh, Kyle is so extroverted, he's so confident, things like that. It was honestly, growing up, it was a total front. Yeah. Because I
fake it till you make it. yeah.
And it's true. And so now being in this place, I think that's why quitting drinking is so powerful. I know how I walk out this door every single day now. And how I show up to the world. Yeah. I know who Kyle is going to walk out the door. At work, people know what Kyle's going to walk into work. It's the same Kyle that walks this earth every day. And that's a really powerful thing. I know you said earlier that nature has been your savior. Yeah. Will you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So like a little bit of the background, I've mentioned I was a river guide already. And then now I'm currently a backpacking guide in the Grand Canyon. I've worked up in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. I do some trips here in Sedona also. But I can tell you that if so I have a bachelor's in business, and which surprises people because I've never used it. But if I went that traditional route and worked in an office and did the 9 to 5 and lived for the weekends, I think that has a place. Some people like disability, and so like not at all to shit on anybody that does that. Like I understand the other side of it because I live a fairly up and down life and seasonal work, and it can be very hard. So, but if I had lived that life, I would have pulled that trigger. Like there was no doubt in my mind. I would have like gone down that pathway. Yeah, like we've talked about we were talking about AA, and one of the things in AA is talking about a higher power. My higher power, where I feel most present and happy and genuinely like fulfilled, is outside. Grounded, like whatever adjective you want to use to describe it, that is my church, and so I feel so much better. Like sometimes I'll kind of be going through it for few weeks, and I'm like, cool, I'm just gonna go rip out 30 miles in Grand Canyon alone, and I come out and I'm exhausted, like so physically beat down. But just like I'm like walking haggard, smelly, exhausted to my truck with a big old smile on my face. So for me, it's been, that's my higher power. But
How is it hiking? Do you hike alone your way out there usually, or do you have a group of people? Or
it's variable. Like don't get me wrong, I love to have like I did a summit with a couple guys. That trip was great. It was I think I can't remember. We did 4 days, I think. Yeah, we did 4 days, 3 nights. There's 2 other guys that I guide with. Great trip. It was like such a like the community aspect is nice, but then sometimes, like we've talked about, you got to sit alone with the feelings, And it's like when you get to camp and you're just there alone and get to stare at the canyon walls and it's beautiful and stuff, but you're like, well, there's nothing to do but think, And so it's like it really sometimes it's like I'll plan a trip and someone's like, hey, can I go with you? I'm like, no, actually you can't, and it's has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Nothing, it has everything to do with me and nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I try to, but like we've also talked a little bit about community and how community is so important. So like I think there's a time and place for the boys trips or I mean just trips with friends, not just the boys, and then there's also trips like, cool, this is meant for me, and this is where I grow, because I think as extroverts too, it's easy to rely on other people, like as like a escape.
No, I was right.
Yeah.
I've been there, so I feel that.
It's like you start feeling the feelings like, cool, I'm gonna hit somebody up and we're gonna go hang out. It's like, cool, no.
Hit a happy hour.
So when you plan a trip and you go out there, it's like you're forced to be alone.
Yeah.
My last one, I just did 30 miles. It was just as an overnight trip. And I didn't see anybody until mile 28. And that was really good for me. Like I didn't see a single person on the trail for the first 28 miles. And so that was, and I was figuring it out this morning. I might actually be planning like a 40-mile trip. And it's even more remote of an area. So I may not see anybody for 40 miles. So like that's healing for me. I think because as an extrovert, it's important to make those alone spaces.
Well, I think it's a crutch, like as well for me. I mean, personally, I remember in college, I would never, dude, if I was like hungry, I would never go eat alone. You wouldn't catch me eating alone on campus. You would never catch me eating like the cafeteria with other students alone. I always have friends with me.
Yeah.
Like even if I was hungry, I'd drive by something like I drive by like drive through. I would never sit alone, and I think that was the most powerful thing for me personally was moving to Vail and just going alone. When I got there,
nice,
like my roommate was 55 years old and wasn't someone I would hang out with outside of the house, but she was really cool, but I did everything alone.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had a crutch to, let's go do this. And my friends in college just say, my friend Jacob was like, dude, you have FOMO. I'm like, what does that mean? It's like fear of missing out. So you're just always like, always hitting people up, always, and that was me. I was using it as a distraction because I was so scared, honestly, to sit in my stuff.
Yep.
And I think sitting there, eating a sandwich, I don't want to do that. I want to talk,
Yeah.
I don't want to sit in my thoughts, and even if we can grab our phones, that's a whole distraction too.
Yep, exactly.
Sitting there, and being in nature, like trees for me have been so healing, and some place that I truly sitting under a tree and just like listening has been really powerful for me. But nature, same thing as you, is so healing. And it's so important, for people to find that instead of like drinking or whatever that is, going out.
Yeah.
Or, going to the gym or running or whatever that is for them that kind of replenishes that in a healthier way is so important,
Yeah, and that's what. So it's like I think as extroverts, it's good for us to sit in our feelings. But one of my favorite studies on addiction. Just bear with me for a second. It's the original study on addiction. One of the most popular one was a guy took a rat, put it in a cage. He gave it cocaine water and just regular water, and it was just a rat, just in a cage alone. And almost 100% of the time, that rat would overdose or drink the cocaine or heroin water until it overdosed and died. Almost every single time. And then it was like the long-standing study on addiction for a long time. So then decades later, I don't know exactly the time frame, but there was another scientist who was like, let's change this up. And he created what he called Rat Park. And so Rat Park was hundreds of rats, a bunch of different cages connected with tubes, and there's wheels and there's toys for them to play with. And it's like rat families, They all live together and and so does the same thing. Cocaine or heroin water and regular water. They almost never drank the drug water. And so I think it's powerful of like, it's important to not rely on other people to handle your feelings, but community is super important. So these people had, these rats had a purpose. They had community. They had things to do, things to keep them motivated, so like, but when you're just a single rat in a cage alone and there's no stimuli in your life, there's no reason to wake up, then I think it's just like, it's just this little rat study. But for me, it's like been profound in my healing and understanding that like community is super, super important to everyone.
No, I think it's the biggest thing that's helped me. And as we get older, we truly realize who our true friends are.
Yeah.
And the ones that, we can count on. And I remember like moving to Vail, and my mom said to me, she said, you're going to find out who your true friends are. And just like how you said extrovert, I had so many friends.
Yeah.
Like everyone knew me, even all the surrounding towns, and we always hang out. It's small, And then I moved, like remembering moving to Colorado, and I had maybe a select few of friends that would call me and check up on me. My best friend at the time, who I thought would be my best man if I did end up getting married in college, never called once.
Yeah.
It was just, you realize, and it's, of course, like you said, you outgrow people, you outgrow your family members, your friends, nothing bad, and you'll always be there for them.
Yep.
But to really have those core friends, my grandma would say, if you can count your best friends on one hand, you're blessed.
Yep.
Or you're lucky. And if you count your true friends on two hands, you're goddamn blessed.
Yeah.
And I think it's so true to have that core and friends you can really talk to, and it's important to be vulnerable, especially as men, with our friends and how we are and where we are. And that's been a really powerful thing for this podcast, is how many of my men in my life who were not vulnerable with me before, just because of this happening, is vulnerable or have been vulnerable. And also, we talked about this earlier too, is, when we're in such a low place or having these struggles, we think it's only us.
Yeah.
It's only us that feeling this way, or only us having these, these thought forms, or these feelings, or this depression, or whatever we are. It's crazy now having this, like how many people in my personal circle have gone through the same things, worse, different experiences, but all around the same things. And it's crazy because it makes you step back and realize, whoa, like it's not just me,
Yeah, that's like, it's important to realize like whatever struggle that anyone is going through, there is somebody else while uniquely different, everybody has their own unique struggles. It's pretty similar to somebody else's, and there's at least eliciting the same feelings. Like, it's so easy for us as adults to isolate ourselves and be like, no one understands. Oh, there's tons of people that understand. Like I told you, like, so I was on that podcast and I was vulnerable publicly for the first. Like, I talked to many of my friends about it, but I was publicly open about my suicide attempt. It was the first time like anyone can hear about this. There was family members that learned about that through that podcast that had never, for 6-7 years, had never known that even happened. And I got like a flood of like, keep it up. Honestly, it was really good for me to hear this because I relate to this, and like people I haven't talked to in a decade. And like I told you, there was this guy that I hadn't seen since high school that I did that podcast, and I've kind of been more vocal just in my stories on Instagram and my reels on Instagram, trying to talk about it more, and of just like, anyway, so I see this post that he makes talking about trying to become better and trying to like get out of his dark past. And so I reached out to him, let him know, like, look, man, if you ever need me, I know we haven't talked in 17 years. We ain't talked since high school. So, but I don't know if it's weird for you, but you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I don't care if it's a text. I don't care if it's a call. I don't care what it is. Feel free to reach out to me for anything. Or if there's any way I can partner with you in a project that you're doing. And he was like, and I was just trying to reach out. Like I told you, I'm trying to give back to the community a lot more. I was just trying to be helpful. And he was like, well, actually, it was your podcast or your experiences that you've talked about that have kind of led me to this. And so it's like, you feel alone, you feel vulnerable. I was like worried when I posted that podcast. I'm like, here's the link, guys. Like, it's out there, and then you get all that positive, and you're like, no, I'm not alone in this. There's so many people. We're all in the human experience. We're all doing our own thing, but there's so much overlap in what we're feeling. And like you were saying, it's like the vulnerability for men is, I think, societally not accepted as much. So I think it's good to create a space for men specifically that allows them to. I think if there's anything I've learned is that women are wanting us to be more vulnerable too.
Well, vulnerability is power, and I think that how you just said for women's sake, for men to be vulnerable is, I think when men hold their emotions inside, it can turn into anger, aggression, all of it.
Yep.
And it's empowered because we hold everything in because we're taught we're not supposed to be. Emotions are weak. If you cry, you're weak. If you're vulnerable, you're weak. And honestly, it's the complete opposite, in my opinion.
Yep.
I think vulnerability is so powerful. It's so needed. And especially in today's world for us men, I feel like a lot of men in our age group are lost. And they're trying to figure out their life. And they're trying to figure out, and we're all in this human experience together. Yeah. We all are in it together, and we all need to lift each other up. And that's honestly why I wanted to create this podcast, is for men to be vulnerable, to sit down and talk. And just because I've posted one video or started this, it's crazy the amount of men, who've reached out saying, hey, I want to be on it, or can I share? And it's so powerful because, and I've said this before to you, it's like talking into the mic is something so healing about it. And it is really scary. Like, it was super scary for me. I'm a pretty private person. This is my really close core friends. Mm-hmm. And now it's anyone can listen to this video. I mean, it's on YouTube. It's like, anyone can listen to it. But the amount of people have poured out and said, hey, I resonate with this, or, did this. And now I have, commented, things like that really matter too. But when someone says it to your face, it's like, whoa. And then that ripples. Yeah. So like even, today my friend asked me, what do you want out of this podcast? And do you want to do men's groups and things like that? And I would love to do that. But right now, if this podcast is already touched, I can personally say 5 people who've reached out, 10, if not more. That was all I wanted, even if it touched one. Yeah. And to learn, like I'm learning from me right now. You're learning from
likewise,
me. And this is what we need as a men's community, and I think it's so powerful. These men groups and these men hikes and things like that, which I think you said you want to start. Yeah. It's so needed. Yeah.
So that's what. So like my kind of long-term goal, and it's gonna be like a very slow start, is to do backpacking trips with a focus on men's mental health. So I want to do men's backpacking retreats. And I'm going to be like, so in guiding, I've taken mostly or all female groups, and you'll take 5 women that have never met, and in 45 minutes they're best friends. They're like, I got this, and we're gonna have to do this, and I'll help you here, and we can trade these things while we're on the trail, and they're just like going off. And then you'll have guys after a 4-day trip that couldn't tell you anything about that couldn't tell you really anything about the other people. So it's like my goal is to immediately like, cool, we're breaking down walls. Like, tell me your deepest, darkest thing that you're dealing with right now, and let's get it out there. What do you want from this trip? Like, like, what do you want out of this podcast? What do you want out of this trip? What's your goal? Like, how are you trying to heal? So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm wanting, and it's to build community. I would love for those, say I take 5 men on a trip, you now have 5 men to reach out to whenever you're in the dark times. It's like, cool, I'm going to like create this group, and you guys handle it. Reach out to me if you need me. But yeah, we're sorry, there's like a guy out there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like just build that community for the fellas. I think it's really, really important for men to have that. And I think it's something we lack in today. Like, I've even found that there's a lot of women that say they want us to be vulnerable, but when you're vulnerable in front of them, they're like, "Oh, this is not what I thought vulnerability meant for a man," and it freaks them out a little bit. And so I think it's really important to have other men to be vulnerable to. I've noticed a huge shift in my healing when I had like a group of men. Like Tuesday nights, it's like last Tuesday was 8 dudes, and we just sat there and we played card games at Cornish Pasty and hung out, and it's like super refreshing to just like literally I went to Arizona Hot Springs and I drove back and it was just 3 dudes in the car. It was like for like 3 hours, and it was fun and it was great, and we talked about some deep stuff, and then we told some dumb jokes and just did dude stuff. And it's like I felt like literally after that 3-hour car ride I was like, man, I feel way better, like just having somebody to talk to. So
I think it's so needed for us men to have a circle and have close ones you can talk to, and especially men, because we're not women. We don't know how women think.
100%.
I have no idea, but we all know like how men think and how they feel, and how they deal with their emotions and their feelings, and yeah, it's difficult for us to be vulnerable, and I think it's scary, and I think for men it's intimidating, and then but once you do it and you sit there and are vulnerable, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And people feel that it ripples, and all of it. It's really needed in today's world.
Yeah.
And I think more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, suicide in men is like doubled over the past decade. I think we're in a huge mental health crisis. I think men are feeling, unheard, and I think I think men have always felt an inability to talk, but I think there's a greater desire now. Men just kind of accepted that, I think, in the past. And now I think there's a greater desire for us to get that out, but still not quite the outlet for it. So I think we're kind of like in this middle, or like we're this intersection of trying to figure out like, where's the space that men can talk, because it hasn't existed. And men want it more than ever now. So yeah, and I hope that's kind of like what I can provide on these trips. Like I've actually talked to my buddy's a life coach in Cottonwood. I've talked to a guy who runs a nonprofit in Flagstaff. Actually, he does like men's groups here, Phoenix, and up in Flagstaff, and is like a nonprofit. He's doing like a 5K for mental health that he just organized, and so he's like, yeah, I think this is important. I want to tag team with you and figure out ways we can like make this happen. So I've had so much support, even just verbal support, like this is what needs to happen. So
yeah, let me know if there's anything I can help with that too.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help in any way. And I was telling him about Boys to Men. It's an organization that I did when I was 13. It changed my life. You basically take 15 to 20 kids ages from 13 all the way to 18. You take them out in Prescott, and it's just a total rites of passage into manhood. And it's 65 to 60 men who are all there for them. And I think when you go through it, it's funny and it's laughing, but then the kids hug you goodbye and they're crying and then they come back. It is so powerful. And, every man, I mean, I think almost every person too, women and men, wear masks. And I think, my mask was that everything is okay and it got me through. But as we get older, we don't need those masks anymore.
Yeah.
We can take them off and it's not so scary. But as a kid, it's scary because you don't want everyone to see you. You know, and I was severely bullied, and I live by this. With your suicide thought, with that day with the gun. I mean, I didn't own a gun when I was 13. I wouldn't have been able to, but thank God. But I truly think if there was cell phones when I was a younger kid, I would not be sitting. I know I would not be sitting in front of this, for this camera with this laptop right now talking to you. I wouldn't be here. I was so severely bullied as a kid, and I think that's also why I have really bad self-confidence as a child. And even now, I mean, I still struggle with it. I mean, a lot better now that I've quit drinking and I'm on this healing journey, but it still affects me,
I think it's you were talking about being like extroverted. You want to have you had a ton of friends and stuff. And I think it really ties into like when you have I always identify mine as like self-worth. As opposed to like an insecurity or whatever per se, but it's very similar. I think you try to have as many friends as possible because that makes you feel more secure. It's like, oh, I do bring value. I have all these friends, and then you were talking about like that if you have enough. Like the one handful of friends, then you're lucky, and more than one handful of like best friends, then you're blessed. And I think it's like you realize that the quality is much. It sounds so cliche, but the quantity of your friends is way more valuable than the quantity of them. And so it's like, it like ties back into just I think your self-worth. You try to have many of these friends, and you try to like do this and this, and you're trying to be like on the in and everybody, and then you're like, it's not helping you. It's only hurting you.
No, and you're surrounded by people who really aren't really your friends
at all.
At the end of the day,
and it makes you feel lonely. And
it's so funny, and how you said, this path for me, and I feel like you said the same thing. It's been lonely. I'm not gonna like cookie cut it. It's a lonely to be on a healing path, and to quit drinking. And to not numb and to really work on your stuff is a lonely path. Yeah. And it sounds like, oh, there's no way, but it's really true because you feel like you're isolated. Yeah. You feel like you're the only one that's doing it. You feel in a group of friends, you're the only one not drinking. Yeah. And it's so interesting when I quit drinking. Everyone's like, oh, why did you quit drinking? Or you have to like explain yourself why you quit drinking. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's my decision. Yeah. It's like I didn't agree with it. It didn't agree with my body. It didn't agree with my mental health. I don't need to drink. My life, like you said, is so much better. Now that I don't drink, I'm happy. I wake up every day with a clear mind. I'm centered. I'm ready for the day. I want to go. I want to go out in nature. Yeah. I don't spend my days off going to happy hour. I'm out paddleboarding or hiking or snowboarding or whatever. But it is a lonely path because it feels like you're the only one doing it. Yep. And, I was telling Chris earlier when I was in Turkey, I felt very alone because it was a non-stop party. I was there for 9 nights. Every night, we'd go out, they have dinner for 5 hours. So from 7 to midnight, go out to dinner. 12 to 2, go out to the bars, 2 to 5, go out to the club. I'm driving everyone home that's drunk as crap. Yeah. And then I'm doing the same day. We sleep till 1 p.m. It was totally not my routine here, at all. And that's why I got this tattoo for Backwards Means Awakening. I think that was a huge trip for me. It was my birthday trip and was a huge realization of truly how far I've come. But it's funny when you quit drinking and you start hanging out with your friends, it kind of makes them reflect, right? And I don't think people like that.
They don't. They don't. When you tell someone you don't drink and they ask why, it's like you're uncomfortable by the fact that I don't drink. And I don't care whether you drink or not. Yeah. That's hilarious that you say that. Yeah, people are like, it's like a reflection of like, oh, well, do you like think I'm like, no, I don't think anything.
Oh,
I
just
don't
say
drink.
sorry that I'm drinking. You're like, no, it's
No,
fine.
nope.
You can drink in front of me. I
Yeah.
don't care. And it's funny when I was in the beginning stages. You've been on it a lot longer than I have. You said 7 years, but
Yeah.
I remember going my first snowboarding. Snowboarding was my biggest trigger. And
Okay.
when I quit
Yep.
drinking, that was like, I wonder how, because snowboarding, if we all snowboard listening to this, it's all evolved around alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, you start drinking. Sometimes like your friends are drinking in the car ride up. They're drinking in the parking lot taking
Yeah.
shots. It's not even 8:30 in the morning, 9 a.m. People are already drinking. People are drunk, by 10. It's a
Yeah.
wild thing. And so for me, I brought NA beers. Remember the first time I quit drinking snowboarding because I quit February 5th. So it was like middle of February.
Okay.
And it was last year. And I remember,
So you're just over a year then. Okay.
over a year.
Yeah.
And I remember bringing like a 6-pack of NA beers. And I was taking I wasn't drinking the whole thing because it was like just stupid carbs, right? But still having half of it when my friends are drinking. And I remember leaving there and I was just like, why? Like, I feel like I'm trying to fit in.
Yep.
It's not about fitting in. And I think that is, for a lot of us, that's been our motto for our whole life, is trying to fit in, right? Not being a leader, being a follower. And for me, and now it's really trippy to see this whole circle.
Yeah.
And see now that I feel like people are looking to me to lead. And they're listening to this podcast or for advice or things like that, or calling me saying, hey, I'm going through this. Will you help me? It's a trip to see how just in a year, and I've said this in this podcast before, but Chris, like this podcast in this instance right here in my house with you right now felt not even out of reach. It felt in a whole different lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like you're how you feel right now.
Yeah.
I mean, for you, probably felt not even possible.
Yeah. 100%.
And being in that moment where you were laying there with the gun, you woke up, it was cold, to where you are now. I mean, Chris, that's a huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge step.
Yeah.
And not only are you helping men, which I think is congrats to you, you're helping yourself and ripples.
Yep.
Yeah,
just like I was saying, it's like we've been talking about healing this whole time, and it's like first it was the stage of quitting drinking, which I thought was healing. Then it was 3 years later I started talking about it and realizing that there's healing in the vulnerability side of it, and now I'm kind of in this stage where like I'm in such a good position in life now. Don't get me wrong. I have bad days. I was telling you when I got here, it's like, that winter funk grabbed a hold of me for a little bit, and I was getting a little like lazy and like, down on myself. And, but now, like those days happen still, no matter how great of a life you have. But I'm in the stage of healing now of giving back. It's like I'm in such a good place now. The way I heal further is trying to now give back to the community. Like, again, we've talked about how if we could take all that experience away that gave us such a hard time as children, would we? And no, my answer is still no. I don't want anybody to feel that. I don't think I deserve to feel that. You didn't deserve to live the life that you had as a kid. Nobody deserves that. But it's made me the person I am today. I'm extremely happy. I'm confident in who I am. I know what I want out of life. I mean, don't get me wrong, get the self-doubt, but I handle it in a healthy manner. And so I wouldn't change any of that. And I wouldn't change that because I get to help people. Like my best friend hit me up on my birthday. His is on leap year. So, and mine's on the 28th. So he hits me up on my birthday. We wish each other happy birthday on mine until it's leap year. But he's like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. He was like, you were pretty much, he's always said like, you were the only one that didn't enable me. You were the only one that would look me in the face and be like, get your fucking shit together, dude. What are you doing? You're fucking up here. You're messing up life. And everybody else would just be like too afraid to like say that. But so, like, when you get moments like that, it just makes me understand like how important it is to give back to people. Like if I can, like you said, if it was the 5 or 10 people that you have affected that have hit you up from this podcast, it was worth it. My one buddy who's like, you pulled me out of a dark hole, and if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. That's enough. But if I can create more of that, I will.
And I think it's so powerful. And I have to touch on enabling, like, it's so important to have those true friends that will literally look you in the eyes and sit you down and be like, dude, you're fucking up.
Yeah.
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 So it's so needed. I had a couple of friends who listen to this podcast who know who you are. who really sat me down and saying, Kyle, you're better than this. You're better than this. You're slipping, you're losing, like get your act together. What are you doing?
Yeah.
We know this, you're way more capable.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for them, I know I probably wouldn't be in this position either. But the biggest thing to learn from is yourself.
Yeah.
If you didn't pick up your own self, like in that moment, throughout my healing journey, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that was been the biggest thing. I posted about it before and talked about it, but it's no one's coming to save you. Zero.
Yeah.
No one's. Your parents can help you. They can help. Whatever they can do. But at the end of the day, the only person that's going to pick yourself up is yourself.
Yeah.
And once you start realizing that, you get a lot of self-confidence and self-worth picking yourself up from way in the deep blue sea, 100 meters down to where you are now. And that is your own journey, right? And it's not always an up,
No.
which is why I called it this trail ahead, because you can go off trail.
Yeah.
You can go back, you can go forward, you can go right, left, every different direction possible.
Yeah.
And still be, where you are today.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, has been the most powerful thing. Is it's not always flowers and beautiful.
No.
We still have low days.
Yeah.
I still wake up and I'm still have bad days.
Yeah.
It's how we handle those bad days now. Because it used to be, for me, was when I had those bad days, I'd go pick up a beer or go buy a joint and just kind of numb it out.
Yeah.
And now it's, okay, it's a really tough day, but I can sit and I can listen to it and feel where it's in my body.
Yeah.
What it's trying to tell me and learn from it. And that has been the most probably beautiful thing about this healing journey, is learning from those bad days. Because like you said, we still have them. It's not all flowers and beautiful blue skies.
No.
It's we still learn it. But instead of the tapping and numbing out, we now have the tools and the self-worth to say, okay, well, let's learn from this. Today's not been the best day. Maybe I need to go out and hike, or maybe I need to go out and paddleboard.
Pull out your gratitude journal that we talked about. Yeah. Like,
will you touch on that? Because I've told so many people about it. How it's changed your life?
So my big things in 2025 were start my gratitude journal and build community. Those are like my two big focuses. And it really is. It genuinely, like, there's scientific studies that shows it genuinely rewires your brain to think in a positive mindset. And it's like, it's human condition to immediately like resort back to the negative side of things. And when you're constantly training, like, it's a constant, I miss days and stuff, but it's, you're trying to rewire your brain to focus on the good as opposed to the bad. And it's really powerful. It's such the simplest thing. And sometimes it's the hard thing. Sometimes you wake up and you're in that bad day and you're like, I'm not grateful for shit today. But then you look at it and you're like, no, I'm grateful. Even if it's, I'm grateful I'm here. I'm grateful I'm still sober. Like, which after 7 years, you don't really think on a day-to-day basis of sobriety anymore. It's just like your lifestyle at that point. So it's like important to remind yourself, like, I'm lucky I'm still here today. There was 7 years ago, I had a gun to my head. And again, I'm lucky to be here. So gratitude journals and community is like my 25 goals. Yeah,
gratitude is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so, and it makes you think about, you're just everything around you. We're redoing our menus at the restaurant. It's a little off topic, but
love it.
And we're looking for a quote, and I look up the restaurant that my mom and family own. It's called Sea Garden Cafe. And looking up quotes, and it really touched me. It said, when you look around, from the book, when you look around, you realize the world is a garden. And it's so true. I'm going to put it on the menu because I thought it was cool. But truly, the world, when you're in such a beautiful, even in a dark place, bro, it's hard to realize the good. But there's still so much good. Yeah. And I had a friend pass. It was his 30th birthday 2 days ago. And he came to surprise me at work. And he was on our path. A path of healing, a path of getting chills, a path of healing and self-worth and growth and just, dude, out of anyone, all my friends in college, he was one that struggled the most. He struggled with a lot of things,
Yeah.
anger and lashing out, and we'd get drunk and just, all of that. The thing is, though, is he came to see me, and this is what I mean by people, listening to this. You can change your life like that.
Yeah.
And he came to see me at work, and we sat outside on the patio. Thank God it was slow that day. And we talked for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And he was doing so good. And then now he's not here. What's crazy, is he had a lot of old ways of living and regrets and things like that. And I told him, and he found his pastor who spoke at his funeral. And his pastor said this, I started crying. He said, Dylan, this person found me, I'll cut that out. This person found me at a really hard point in their life. And he asked me before he died, has God forgiven my sins and my ways of being? And his pastor said he already has. And then he dies the next day. Crazy, right? And super deep and powerful. And that's a really big meaning. Is you can always turn your life around.
Yeah.
And I talked about this in this podcast before, is January 1st, we always use New Year, everything to change our life. Oh, this year is going to be the year that I'm going to change my life. This is the year of, whatever it is. And now it used to be me every year. It doesn't matter if you change your life on January 1st.
Yeah.
It could be January 2nd or 3rd, and you haven't gone to the gym. You promised yourself every day I'm going to go to the gym, you haven't gone. It's January 3rd, I've only gone the first day, and then I'm out.
Yeah.
Just because you haven't followed it. Like for me, January 1st, I'm going to quit drinking. I quit on February 5th, but now I'm over a year. My whole life has changed. Truly, in and out and all around, my life has changed. Just because you don't promise yourself on that specific day doesn't mean that you can't do it again. And use that as a data point. I listened to this thing, and my friend told me that. It was this podcast I listened to. It says, let's say you start drinking and you relapse. Use that as a data point. Because we can beat ourselves up. You can go back and say, I relapsed, whether alcohol, drugs, sugar, phone, whatever it is. You can use that as a data point and say, okay, well, that's where I used to be, and now look at my life. A year, truly, this life, Chris, felt unimaginable, felt way out of reach. And it's been a year and, I guess a year and a month almost. And it's just crazy how fast it goes, and two, how much your life can truly change if you do the work. And I think how you said is, in AA, I agree with a lot of things. I'm actually speaking at an AA meeting coming up the middle of this month. And I'm really excited to talk about it and present because quitting alcohol is just step one. Yeah. And everyone can just say, oh, I've done, like you said, I've done the work. I'm good. I quit drinking. Nah, man, that's just the beginning.
Only started,
And you have just started. And that is up to you at that point, right? Quitting alcohol, okay, now you've gotten past your crutch, your gray sky.
Yeah.
Are you going to take the left or right path at that point? Are you just going to say, oh, I'm an alcoholic and I quit drinking and I'm good? Alcohol was my problem.
Yeah.
And so for some people that might be it. But for a lot of people, alcohol was just a crutch.
Yeah. It wasn't the problem.
No, it was not the problem. No. What is the problem? And are you going to figure it out?
Yeah.
Or are you just going to say, nah, dude, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Oh, I yell at my wife, or I'm an aggressive dude, I'm an alcoholic, that's just what I do.
Yeah.
No. Find that. And I'm excited to talk about that, touch on that in that meeting, because I think, and there's so much negativity around alcoholism, and there is. It's a lot. It truly, as someone said, you go to a bar and they say, what spirits do you want?
Yeah.
You're if you're on a spiritual journey or whatever, you believe in a higher power or whatever, God, whatever your higher power is, there's good and there's evil, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to figure out what is good and what's evil. Some people can handle alcohol. Some people are great with it.
Yeah.
Some people can't.
Yeah.
And it's just like everything. Some people can handle sugar. Mm-hmm. Some people can't.
And that's like, you were talking about the journey from the day you got sober to now is this huge unimaginable difference. I think it's important to take all of our problems one day at a time.
100%.
Because for some people, that first year of growth was really slow for me because I wasn't identifying my problems. I just I fixed the problem. Drinking was the problem. And so and that's why I think I was lucky in that I was I'm going to take a break from alcohol. I'm not going to do that. I'm not quitting forever. I'm just quitting for now, because you don't get this unsurmountable idea of like, I never get to have this ever again. So, and that's why I tell my buddies who are like struggling with anything, it's like, if you can take it a week at a time, take it a week at a time. If you can take it a day at a time, take it a day at a time. And if you need to go to AA when you wake up before work and when you get off work, do that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, take it hour by hour if you have to. Because everybody's journeys can be slow, fast, different. And I think it can be dangerous to, one of my favorite quotes is, comparison is the thief of joy. And so if you compare your journey to somebody else's that's wildly different, and if you're like, well, I've been sober for a year and they've been sober for a year, and look how much their life's improved, and look how incrementally small mine has improved. And it's like, okay, we'll take that incrementally small improvement and tenfold it, And it's like, cool. In 10 years, I know that sounds, but like, it's like important to like look at the long run, but also to keep it in the short term. And it's so dynamic. Everybody's journey is like so different, and it's like, but also so similar. It's like,
Yeah. And I think it's so important to not judge people.
100%.
And I think
Yeah.
we're so easy to judge and to hear somebody struggling. And being now on this healing journey, doing the work that I do, everyone can deal with it on their own terms and their own way of doing it, whatever that works for them.
Yeah.
Like you said, if going to AA will help you, then you do it.
Yeah.
If you've into drugs, I think it's called, I forgot what it's called.
NA usually, yeah.
NA, so then you go to NA.
Yeah.
Whatever it is for them, whatever helps them. If it's going to church, if it's going to men's group, whatever it is for them.
100%.
Some people have to go to rehab if that's what helps them. There's no judgment in that.
Yeah.
All that matters is, and I actually ran into an old friend at the coffee shop like a couple weeks ago. And he and I kind of parted ways as friendship because he was just really aggressive and, just would lash out and just was not a nice person. Said to me in the coffee shop, Kyle, I'm really sorry for the way I used to be. I could have sat there in the moment and been like, oh, an instant judge, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I doubt it. You know how hard it is for a man to say sorry? We know how it is.
Yeah.
That never really says it, it's real. And I talked to him for about an hour and a half at that coffee shop. What really matters, and I forgave him, but what really matters is where he and everyone's at now.
Yep.
We all have had a past.
Yep.
We've all had regrets and guilt and shame and things that we wish we didn't have done or hadn't done to people or, things like that. What it matters the most is, one, you've recognized those and said sorry for them, which is a step in AA.
Yep.
And two, you've forgiven yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
I had the last 2 episodes ago, it was about forgiveness. And Caleb asked me, he's like, have you forgiven yourself or your father? Like, I sat there and it is so hard.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is the hardest thing, at least I think for anybody, but for me especially, is forgiving other people is one thing, but forgiveness of self is the hardest thing. And I asked Ben, my therapist, that, and he agreed. That is the hardest thing people realize.
Yeah.
Is forgiving themselves. And some people, it's hard.
Yeah.
And it really is, it's really, really hard to sit there and forgive ourselves or a way we acted or, a thing we said.
That's something that it took me a long time. I think it took me probably like 4 or 5 years to like completely forgive myself for past actions. I was like, for me to realize like I'm not that person anymore, and to leave that person in the past, I have to forgive myself. So it was like this weird, I don't even know how to put it, but it was just like, I would beat myself up. Even in sobriety, like years and years after being sober, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. I was such a terrible human being. And I talk about that I was just talking with my friends the other day. I'm like, I'm really happy that these are like 2 of my closest friends in Arizona. I'm like, I'm really happy you guys did not know me then. Like, because I value you so much that I'm glad you never had to see this person that would have been probably so toxic. Because y'all are such good people. I'd have been so toxic, you would have had no time for me. And rightfully so. But I've forgiven myself now. And so like I can be the person that I need to be to have a community like you.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, I mean, everybody deserves community and wherever they come from. But yeah, that one was like, it's funny that you say that. It's like, it was a tough one for me to forgive myself. Probably took me like 4 years or so.
No, I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I found an acupuncturist in the village, and she said, like our very first appointment, she said, your heart chakra's out. And it was funny. I was like, this girl knows what's up. I had been working on that for the last 2 years. My heart chakra is like the I am statements and forgiving myself and my heart and where I came from and the child that Kyle was.
Yeah.
And I talked to Ben about this in our last session. He said, Kyle, you have to forgive yourself because the surroundings and the tools that Kyle had in those moments as a child were not where you were today. You didn't have the tools. You didn't know what was going on. You didn't have the clarity or the thought process or the maturity or the lessons, whatever it was. You only were using what you knew was right in the toolbox. And it hit, and I was like, you're right. But it's so true. In that moment, we were children, and for your father, I don't know how you felt, but for me, my dad was over abandonment over and over and over again. But the only person that I took my anger out on it was my mom because she was the only one that was there.
Yeah.
Which is honestly the reason why I moved home was because I felt like, I was living my life in Vail and I was finally finding my way and making friends and community because I was there for almost 3 years. But I felt I had a duty to come home. It's been the absolute most blessing, most beautiful thing that has ever happened to me moving here. But for the first 2 years, it was the fucking worst, absolute hell of a 2 years. Let me tell you, Chris. And how you had that rock bottom with a gun, I had rock bottom for me too.
Yeah.
And I feel because I quit drinking for 90 days because Kimberly told me it takes a season to break a habit. So I quit for 90 days. Same kind of thing. I'm good. Yep. I've done it. I'm good.
Yeah.
I can do it. Then I 20 days later hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I think it needed to happen and had to happen. And now I use that as motivation for myself and to know where I came from. So I feel we can use our moments and our rock bottoms as motivation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And everybody's got their rock bottom.
100%.
Yeah. Everyone has their version of like, this was the point where I knew. It's different for everybody. And that's like, it's funny that you said you didn't have the tools at that time to deal with it or the maturity or something. And so sometimes I would beat myself up of like, well, I should have. I didn't get sober until I was like 28. So by 28, I should have been like long before that, I should have been mature enough. And so it becomes this this never ending circular cycle of like, well, I didn't, but I should have. And now I feel bad for it. But it's like, it is really like sobriety and healing yourself is really just about breaking negative habits across the board. Like first it's not turning to the bottle to solve it. And then it's like turning to healthy coping mechanisms. And now it's like, I grew up as an addict, you're generally probably pretty selfish. And so now it's like, cool. Now I'm working on not being selfish and giving back to the community. And, like it's funny that you use the word data point earlier. This is kind of like a little bit off topic, but still just in my mind right now of like, sometimes you meet somebody and you have no idea what's going on in their life. They're rude, they're mean, and they're nasty or whatever. And you've gotten one data point out of whatever, 1 million data points that person has produced in their life. Mm-hmm. So you're working with one data point and you've immediately summed this person up off of one data point. So in part of my project of like, or my personal project of like creating more community, it's looking at somebody when they're angry and smiling at them. And it almost, just part of me that's like, that's actually the best way to get back at them. When somebody's mad and you smile at them, it makes them more
So
mad.
you're driving, someone's yelling at you. Just
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Oh, some dude flicked me off the other day. I was like, I did. I just smiled. I was like, man, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Yeah. So, and it's like, but yeah, you're like dealing. Somebody like put it in those terminology for me in terms of data points, and it's like you're working with one data point, and that person is much more in their life than that one data point. Also, is that one data point being expressed because, like whatever, like, I've had a really close friend of mine overdose and die. I was probably a pretty unpleasant person that week, because the last things that I said to him were not good things. He was in the throes of addiction, and I basically told him, I was like, yo, fuck off. You need help. Like, I don't like who you are. He was like, in his addiction, he was not a good person. And so, like, anyways, in that time, I was probably a shithead to people, And so it's like, it's all about grace and just like, look, we're all living the human experience, and just smile at people. And it's better to put, there's nothing in this world that's going to be harmed by putting more love into it.
Yeah, kindness costs nothing.
Yeah. Being mean doesn't cost anything either.
Yeah, that's
No,
true.
I'm just kidding.
That's true. What is
It costs personal problems, but yeah.
Straight up. And I think that's where, we were doing a men's group hike for the full moon, and this guy, I talked about this before, this guy comes joining later.
Mm-hmm.
He was hiking and asked him to join us, and he did. His name was Michael. He was a powerful man. And was like addicted to pills and things like that. He's been years sober, and he just said at the very end, we closed the circle. He said, anything comments anyone wants to make. He said, do not judge anyone else, anyone's journey. Everyone is walking by you, struggling with something. You don't know what it is, and we're so easy to judge, and that is just so important for anyone listening. Is don't judge, but also if you're going to judge somebody, look within yourself, because I bet you the people who think that you're judging somebody else on is something that you also need to work on too. And that's and it's an immediate reflection. What is if you could come back to yourself going through that moment when you had that gun, you woke up in the morning, where you are now, what is like some advice you'd give that person?
Oh, that's a good question. I probably have a lot of advice, and I know I wouldn't have listened to it in that moment. But it would first be like, just love yourself, because I didn't love myself in that moment, and love others. But like, you can't love others until you learn to love yourself. Oh man, that's a great question. You got me.
You can think about it.
That's a good one. But don't be so hard on yourself. That's an important one. Like it's so easy to beat yourself. Like you said, when you haven't forgiven yourself, it's so easy to beat yourself up for your past crimes, as for lack of better words, or your wrongdoings in life. It's so easy to beat yourself up, and then it's like, well, I'm already this person. This is what people expect of me. So it's like so easy to get into that cycle of like, whatever. And, oh man, I think this might be a question I ponder over for the next few weeks. Actually,
we can do another episode too. I love that. I think that has been the coolest thing having this podcast. Truly, is how many men have reached out and wanted to be on it, and have gone through the struggles, which I know can touch a lot of people. Yeah. And I think it's so important, we've talked about this at this podcast too, is just when we are in such a low point, we think that it's just us. No one else is feeling this way. Yeah. I could be the only one. And it's so important for other men and people, women and men, to hear that not only are these struggles in their own lives, but other people around us. Yeah. And a lot of men, I feel, are going through the same things as us. There wasn't social media back in the day where we could compare us, like we talk about, compare our lives, ourselves with everybody. Yeah. If you saw someone with a Lambo that was 25 years old, you had to see them with your own eyes back in the 60s and 70s or whatever. Now it's, I can look on Instagram and see it immediately, or life, or travel, or we're so easy to compare. But money is something that for me doesn't bring happiness. Of course, it can make your life a lot easier.
Yeah.
It can make your life easier. But true happiness is being within yourself, sitting in your own stuff, and being able to sit down and realize and listen and have the calmness. Meditation is something that I've been trying to work on every morning. Gratitude journal.
Yeah.
I've gotten up. I'm doing a gong. So every day, 100 days of doing qigong.
Okay.
I sit outside and I wake up. I used to grab my phone in the morning and check my emails, Instagram, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore. I get up and I grab my gratitude journal. I walk outside. I do a mantra with my mala. It's just finding that routine that will help you, which has helped me personally. And just take it, how you said, day by day.
Yeah.
You know, and if you stop on one day, I go, it's okay. I'm going to go right back to it. You know, it's like Ben said, if you promise yourself something and you make a self-personal promise, which I did for many years and I never followed it.
Yeah.
It's journaling why. Why did you not that day? What excuse or what reason do you have for that?
Yeah.
And start over the next day.
Yep.
You know? Journaling has really helped.
One of my favorite quotes I've heard recently, and I've really been like ruminating on it lately, is like the single best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time to plant a tree is today.
I like that.
So it's very easy to be like, I should have done this. I should have done this. Do it like now. Now is the time, right? Like, yeah, you didn't do it yesterday, or you didn't do it last week, or you didn't do it last year. But today's the day, and just make it happen. You know, that's one I like. You're talking about mantras, like that one, and then discipline is freedom. And so, like, you know, you're disciplining yourself to do all these things so that you feel more free in your life. And it's like, yeah, discipline is like the truest form of self-love. Like, you're doing this thing that in that moment you don't want to do, and you make yourself do it anyways because you're going to have this outcome in the end. And it may take a long time, but, you know, it's like that final outcome that you're focusing on, even though in that present, it is not fun, you know? So those are like the two things that I've really like over the past couple months. I'm like, you know, that's kind of been my mantras of like, this is what I'm focusing on. It's like, yeah, I could have done this 20 years ago. Or, you know, like I beat myself up in my sobriety of like, don't get me wrong. I was rafting. I was doing some cool stuff, but it's like the amount of motivation I have now versus then is like, what if I just had never become an addict? What if I quit drinking at 22 instead of 28? Like, you know, I have no desire to climb Everest anymore, but like what, you know, like would I've climbed Everest? Would I have done these like massive, I mean, you know, I go out on these big adventures and stuff, like what would I have spent like months out in the backcountry alone, or like, you know, you kind of like, how much of my life did I waste away? And it's like, it's irrelevant. That's in the past. I didn't plant the tree 20 years ago,
Right now.
but I'm going to plant it right now, you know? So.
And I think that's so important. You know, we're only, how old are you?
I'm 36 as of just a few days ago. Yeah.
You know, happy belated birthday.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, I'm almost 30. And Ben told me this. He said, Kyle, you are so ahead of your time.
Yeah.
You don't even realize. And it's just like, he's like, I didn't figure out my life till I was like in my 40s.
Yeah.
You know, and that is something that I try to remind myself over too is, yeah, you can beat yourself up and this and that, but I didn't do that 20 years ago. I should have done it, you know, whatever it is. But what matters the most, like you said, is we are where we are today.
Right now.
And like, just like my friend at the coffee shop, he didn't realize it in college, but now look at him.
Yeah.
You know, and it all comes and we all goes. And, you know, friendships are so important. Community is so important. To listen, to learn, to grow. Discipline is something that I've been working on recently. Is like getting up and keeping a promise to myself, not grabbing my phone or things like that.
Yeah.
Like that's discipline. You know, whatever it is for you that will help you find that. Journaling is also, I've talked about this a lot on this podcast, has helped me a lot because you can see how far you've come. And, you know, I mean, there's so much we could talk about it. I definitely think we need to have like one more episode.
Yeah.
We can keep it going, you know, but I just wanted to say, Chris, I'm really proud of you, man. Like
Likewise.
you've come a long way, especially in that moment, you know, to where you are now.
Yeah.
You really sat down, you listened to yourself, you can sit there in your feelings, and it's not and also the biggest thing, Chris, is you're being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, to tell about that moment in your life is so powerful, and I'm sure in listening to people listening to this, it's going to touch somebody.
Yeah.
And that to me is vulnerability is power. So like, men listening to this, be vulnerable, tell your real friends how you're actually feeling, not just the nominal, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. How are you? Like, stop fucking saying I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, tell somebody how you truly feel. And I'm just really proud of you and the man you become, man.
Man, I appreciate you having me on. This has actually been, like on podcasts, you get asked a lot of questions and you start talking, but it's like been cool to like bounce back and forth. And like I said, I'll probably be thinking about what's that advice that I've given. I'll be thinking about that for weeks to come, months maybe.
When you go on this next trip, think about it, and then we'll circle back. And
in the essence of men being vulnerable, I would love to end this podcast with just a hug, man.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Love you, bro.
Thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
And to have men that want to be vulnerable is why I started this. And, I feel that men need this so bad. A lot of women have a lot of podcasts and things like that, and they can talk to, but men, I feel, don't really have a safe, vulnerable space where they can talk about themselves and their journeys. So shout out if you want to be on it. Love you guys. Really appreciate you tapping in. Thank you, Chris.
Feel free to reach out to me for anything. If you have any mental health issues, I'll be an ear to listen to. Yeah.
Right back at you too. And
yeah.
let me know about these circles. I'd love to help any way I can.
Hell yeah, man.
All right, bro. I love you. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for tapping in, and I will see you Tuesday. Peace out.